In the name of Allah, the most merciful. I begin with the premise that reason is a noble tool, yet limited. Faith, at its core, is not irrational, but suprarational. It begins where reason ends. The philosophers err when they attempt to reduce the unseen to empirical certainty. Belief in the divine in the last day and in revelation requires a heart that has been purified. Reason alone cannot access that domain. My journey in deliverance from error shows that certainty is granted not through syllogism, but illumination. To ask if faith is rational is to misunderstand its nature. Faith is not against reason, but beyond it.
Thank you, Imam Ghazali. I appreciate your insights. From a contemporary perspective, faith and reason are often seen as separate domains, but they need not be. Faith can be rational when it is consistent with one's experiences, values, and moral reasoning. For example, someone may believe in God because the belief provides coherence to the universe's complexity, a sense of moral order, and existential meaning. These are rational motivations, even if the belief cannot be empirically verified. Modern philosophy recognizes practical reason, which allows belief to be considered rational based on its coherence, not only evidence. Faith is not always irrational, it may simply be non-empirical.
Your distinction between empirical and non-empirical reason is appreciated, yet insufficient. I have seen philosophers fall into the illusion of certainty through logic alone. The soul demands more than coherence. It craves haqq, the truth that awakens the heart. When I examined the different schools, Mutazilites, Batinites, and the philosophers, I found that each clung to reason like a blind man to a staff. But illumination, the inner certainty gifted by God, is like the rising sun. It requires submission, not deduction. Faith cannot be measured by pragmatic utility or psychological comfort. It is rooted in divine unveiling, not mental construction.
While your concept of divine unveiling is spiritually rich, it remains inaccessible to those outside the tradition. Rational discourse seeks universality. If faith relies solely on personal mystical experience, how can it be communicated or evaluated? In epistemology, a belief is rational when it is justified by reasons accessible to others. This includes evidence, coherence, and consistency. Personal certainty is meaningful, but it cannot serve as a universal standard for rationality. Faith becomes rational when it is open to critique, self-reflection, and revision. Otherwise, it may become dogmatic or sectarian. Must faith reject this kind of openness?
Openness to critique is noble in science and mathematics. But in religion, revelation is the measure. The divine word is not subject to revision by human intellect. Indeed, the arrogance of the philosophers lies in their attempt to place human judgment above God's guidance. I do not reject reason. I only reject its supremacy over revelation. Faith is not blind. It is enlightened through prophetic knowledge. My Ihya teaches that faith is cultivated through practice, discipline, and the gradual softening of the heart. Not endless dialectics. Rationality may assist the seeker, but it cannot replace divine light.
A fair point. Reason alone may not satisfy all existential needs. Still, even within religious traditions, there is diversity of interpretation. This diversity shows that reason plays a vital role in faith development. Rationality can help differentiate between harmful beliefs and those conducive to ethical living. Consider how reason led many believers to oppose literalism, superstition, or oppressive practices justified in the name of religion. In this way, faith becomes not only personally meaningful but socially responsible. Reason is not an enemy of revelation, it is a safeguard against its misuse. Shouldn't rational scrutiny enhance, not undermine, faith?
Yes, reason may refine practice, but only within the framework of revelation. It is like a lamp inside a house, not the sun itself. I wrote in The Incoherence of the Philosophers that those who claim eternal universes or deny divine knowledge of particulars are led astray by flawed logic. Such reason leads to heresy. God's knowledge and will transcend causal chains. Faith in these truths is rational, not by philosophical demonstration, but by prophetic authority. Faith becomes irrational only when it contradicts clear revelation, not when it transcends philosophical standards. The measure is divine, not human.
Yet, without shared rational standards, how do we distinguish between competing religious claims? Different traditions assert conflicting revelations. If each claims supra-rational truth, which one should be followed? Rational inquiry helps us evaluate these competing claims. It doesn't require absolute certainty, only reasonable grounds for belief. Faith grounded in history, ethics, and coherence can still be rational without full proof. Faith should not fear the light of reason, rather it should shine more brightly when examined. Is it not possible that reason is also a gift from the divine, meant to guide us?
Indeed, reason is a divine gift. But like all gifts, it must be used within its proper bounds. When it tries to grasp what is beyond its reach, like the essence of God or the unseen, it leads to confusion. That is why I distinguished between necessary knowledge, which is innate, and acquired knowledge, which can mislead without divine guidance. The philosophers, in their arrogance, sought to subject God to the standards of Greek metaphysics. But Islam teaches that true knowledge comes from tawfiq, God's enabling grace. Reason is useful for protecting the faith from error, but it cannot establish faith on its own.
Your distinction is clear, and I respect the humility it represents. Still, in pluralistic societies, we must rely on shared tools like reason to build mutual understanding. Without it, religious claims become isolated and immune to dialogue. Faith, if rooted in fear of questioning, risks becoming rigid and exclusionary. A rational faith, by contrast, invites inquiry, grows through reflection, and fosters dialogue across traditions. This does not negate the sacred. It enriches it. Rationality does not replace revelation. It helps us interpret it in a changing world. Can revelation not speak through reason, too?
Revelation can indeed be interpreted, but its core truths are timeless. Reason assists, yes, but always under the light of the revealed word. When I wrote about the limits of philosophers, it was not to banish reason, but to warn against its overreach. Faith is not merely about assent to propositions. It is trust, iman, surrender, taslim, and awe before the divine. This cannot be captured by logic alone. The heart has a knowledge the mind cannot grasp. That is why the saints and the prophets, not the logicians, are the true guides to certainty.
Your emphasis on awe and trust is powerful. Yet, for many today, belief cannot be commanded, it must be persuaded. And persuasion requires reasons. In an age shaped by science and skepticism, faith must offer more than tradition. It must explain itself, not as scientific fact, but as a meaningful, coherent worldview. A rational faith is not cold, it is honest. It accepts doubt as part of the journey. It says, I believe, but I also ask. That vulnerability is not weakness, it's the path to a mature, resilient belief. Does your model of faith allow room for that questioning?
Yes, questioning is the beginning of the path, but not its end. My own journey began with doubt. In Deliverance from Error, I describe how I suspended judgment until I found certainty. But not all questioning leads to truth. Some leads to confusion, pride, or despair. The key is adab, discipline and humility in seeking. Revelation gives the traveler a compass. Without it, one may wander endlessly in the desert of opinions. Reason can question, but it must also learn when to be silent. Faith is not the absence of doubt, it is the light that guides through it.
Then perhaps we agree more than we differ. I too see faith as a journey and reason as a companion, not a rival. The modern mind seeks understanding, not blind obedience. Faith that acknowledges uncertainty and still commits has a quiet strength. It does not claim infallibility, it lives in tension between knowledge and mystery. In that sense, faith can indeed be rational, not because it proves, but because it trusts wisely. Perhaps the real question is not, can faith be rational, but what kind of reason do we need to believe well?
A beautiful point. If reason bows before the real and aids the heart in seeking the beloved, then it becomes a path to salvation. But if it insists on proof where proof is not granted, it becomes a veil. The believer, like the mystic, walks between certainty and longing. Faith, at its peak, is not a conclusion, it is a surrender. That surrender, when done knowingly, with reason as servant and not master, is the highest form of rationality. Not logic's triumph, but its transcendence. May we both strive for that balance, for the sake of truth.
Thank you, Imam Ghazali. I have learned from your wisdom. Perhaps then faith and reason are not enemies, but different languages for the same quest. One speaks through love, the other through logic. Where they meet, there is depth, humility, and wonder. In the end, the rationality of faith may not lie in formulas, but in its capacity to orient a meaningful life, to nourish ethics, and to connect us with something greater than ourselves. That, I believe, is a reason worth considering.